Shannon Wagner with CPS Energy. I'm decidedly not high-tech. I've been primarily in finance and business development. So in business development, when we close a deal or get asked technical questions, we just shrug our shoulders and say, I'm just the business guy. So that's where I come from. The way we started with probably around 2005, we signed our first PPA for utility scale solar. And then a few years ago, I was on one of the deal teams in business development where we went out on an RFP for 400 megawatts of utility scale solar. And it was unique in that we were requiring economic development packages in the power purchase agreement. And so we ended up with OCI Solar Power moving their headquarters from Atlanta to San Antonio. Mission Solar is a panel manufacturer, established in manufacturing. It's ramping up to 200 megawatts probably in the next couple of years in San Antonio at the old Brook City base. We have CATEE Inverters moved their American headquarters from California to Texas, San Antonio, and Sun Action Trackers has a manufacturing facility in San Antonio. So what we really wanted to do not only was build out 400 megawatts of utility scale solar, but we wanted to be like the solar mecca hub for the United States where, San Antonio is a poor town. We have a lot of undereducated people. So part of the economic development package was not only CapEx and jobs in high-tech fields, but a lot of educational grants and commitments so that we could have our own little STEM education thing for preschoolers, high schoolers, colleges, and grow our own engineers and our own future CEOs. So we call these our new energy economy, new energy as in solar and not fossil fuels. And so these are some of our new energy economy partners. So this is our ramp up in utility scale solar, and it's got a little bit of rooftop solar. So, we really like the trajectory of this chart. By 2016, we should have over 500 megawatts of utility scale solar built out. And by the end of 2016, we should also have about 35 megawatts of private ownership rooftop solar. So what we want to do was try to get our distributed generation solar or rooftop or private ownership to ramp up at the same level. We've been going up about 3 megawatts a year in distributed generation, and we wanted to find a way to really ramp that up. We have a program called Save for Tomorrow Energy Plan, or our STEP program, which we started around 2007, and the idea was to, through energy efficiency, demand response, those type of programs, reduce load by 770 megawatts, so we wouldn't have to build the next coal-fired plant that our supply-side engineers said we needed to build by 2020. So through STEP, we have had a solar rebate program that's right now at about 25 megawatts built out. We're trying to end that rebate program for a variety of reasons and come up with new alternatives. And this heat map the colors are not very good, I apologize for that. San Antonio is up here in the north. That is median income greater than 50,000. So that's the wealthiest part of town. And you can see right here, those are rooftop solar installations based on our rebate program. And so our distribution engineers are really uncomfortable with all that clustering of intermittent power sources on their circuits. And they've asked us to please stop putting solar on the north side of San Antonio, spread it around, do what you can. And besides, the net metering issue has problems with, these customers are the wealthiest in San Antonio, but the whole service territory, even the poorest people, are subsidizing the rebates. And so optically, it's not going to drive customer satisfaction for our poorer customers. And this is where the money is. Under the rebate program, under private ownership, you've probably got to have $10,000 at least after incentives in order to install those systems. So what can we do to spread solar so that everybody in our service territory feels like solar's for them, not this feeling that solar is only for the rich people? So we want to drive customer satisfaction. We feel like having more solar in our portfolio is going to be a hedge against carbon legislation. And we've come up with 2 new pilot programs under a new brand by CPS Energy called Simply Solar. One of them is a community solar program with Clean Energy Collective. We call that ROOFLESS Solar. And another is solar hosting with PowerFin Partners. And so we're rolling both of these out as pilot programs. The community solar is a 1 megawatt array, and the solar host is up to 10 megawatts. And we'll see how this goes. We know we're going to make some mistakes. Try to figure those out, the pros and the cons, and then figure out how we can ramp it up even, to 50, 100, 200 megawatts in the future. So the objectives of the pilot program, we want to recover fixed costs from the solar customers, which we don't adequately do now with the net metering. We want to better manage impacts on the distribution grid. We want to study the solar sites and understand them better so we can manage our assets more effectively. We want to broaden availability to all of the customers so you don't have to have a whole lot of cash or the ability to take on debt in order to have solar in your power mix. Right now, really the only option for private ownership is rooftop. Some people have some ground mount systems, but not a whole lot. We find that, well, I'm sure everybody finds that only about 20% of the rooftops in San Antonio are really conducive to solar power because of the way they're situated, because of their roof condition, or shading. And we certainly don't want anyone cutting down trees. Also, you have to be a homeowner or a rooftop owner in order to take advantage of the current rebate system. So we want to open that up to apartment dwellers, renters, things of that. We do consider renewables a hedge against carbon legislation and the costs of fossil production. So we want to keep diversifying our portfolio in a renewable space. Of course, the less environmental impact is something that everybody is happy about, and there's no water consumption for PV solutions. And we're almost always in drought conditions in San Antonio. So the solar host program has gotten wide appeal, and this is it's hard for me to explain it simply to people who know what they're talking about, much less to residential customers. We are a muni, so we do all of our renewables under a PPA, since we can't take advantage of the tax incentives. Under this model, CPS has a PPA contract with PowerFin Partners to build out 10 megawatts of solar. Part of that, if we built a utility scale plant, part of the PPA price would include the cost of the land lease. Well, instead of putting this on 10 acres of land or whatever, they're putting it on rooftops. And so part of the PPA price is basically a lease cost to the person hosting that array on their roof. So we have a PPA with the developer. The developer owns the system, takes all of the power. We buy 100% of the power. It's connected to the customer on CPS's side of the meter. We take 100% of the power. Nothing goes to the customer's home. We simply pay a portion of the PPA price to the customer in the form of a rebate or a bill credit for letting us host it on their rooftop. And so it's a completely free program to the customer. There's no O&M, there's no insurance. The developer pays for all of that. The customer signs a 20-year contract with the PPA developer, and they get a small host fee. Like I say small. Under our current net metering, our retail rate is about 10 cents a kilowatt hour, which if you bought your own system, you would net meter at 10 cents a kilowatt hour. This host fee to the customer under this program is at 3 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's not a huge moneymaker, but it's free. So we're hoping that we can, through this program, we can incentivize some of our poorer customers, some of our customers on the lower income side of town to really want to put this up on their roof. In the first week, in the first week we got about 1,500 applications. Right now we're up to over 4,000 applications. And so if we could roll out this and the 1 megawatt of community solar, that would be 11 megawatts that we feel we could roll out in the next year, compared to the rebate program, which had been rolling out about 3 megawatts a year. So if we can make this successful, we think we can really ramp up the number of installations each year and improve our customer satisfaction. So, of course, the obstacles are the same as the rooftop, the private ownership model, in that your rooftop has to be situated properly. We are thinking maybe 20% of the 4,000 applicants will be able to take advantage of this program. And so for the people who do not, for the people who are being disqualified from the solar host program, we're referring them to the community solar program, or roofless solar. And in this situation, we've got a PPA with Clean Energy Collective of Colorado. Customers buy individual panels from Clean Energy Collective, and we've gotten the cost, the panels are about 107 watts, so they're very small panels. The cost of the panel before tax incentives is about $400, after tax incentives about $285. So we're trying to make it affordable, that if somebody is in an apartment or somebody really wants to be into solar but they can't spend $10,000, okay, well, here's, for $400 you can get a small panel. At least you're into solar, you can scale it up anytime you want. You can, you basically own those panels. And then CPS Energy, we have a PPA with the developer here, but once the developer sells that panel to the customer, then they assign the revenue stream of the power production, the dollars per kilowatt hour, to the customer. So we end up giving bill credits to the customer for the power produced from their panels. Okay, so nothing on your roof, no maintenance. You can live anywhere in the service territory and virtually take your panel with you. And if you move out of the service territory, you can sell or gift your panel to another user who's in the service territory. So the value we see in these programs, these are lower cost than the traditional rebate program, especially on the solar host program. Because this supplier knows he's got 10 megawatts, he can buy in bulk and get lower prices on component parts, whereas the solar installers now have to do one-off as they make a sale. And I should mention that the solar host developer was required in our contract to use local installers. And he has agreed that any local installer who wants to be given a shot will be given a shot, as long as he signs a contract and lives up to the quality expectations. And the utilities, the community solar is naturally lower priced than the private ownership rooftop, because it's ground mount and it's 10 megawatts in size, or a megawatt in size. We have a fixed price over the contract period. Because we are wanting south or west facing roofs, we can shave our peak with it. Steady demand for subcontractors, and it is, naturally it's more expensive than the utility scale solar that we are building out with the 500 megawatts. But it's how we address our customers saying we want solar, and they don't necessarily see how solar impacts them when it's in a huge field out somewhere that's not close to them. One other interesting aspect for our smart research people is that on the solar host program, the 10 megawatts of rooftop, we are installing smart inverters on all of those rooftops. And so we hope to watch them for around 6 months, see what we can learn from them, hopefully learn how to minimize the negative effects on the grid of solar, and then we could even deploy it wider going forward once we can get a grip on the grid aspects. So far we have had a very strong success with the solar host program, over 4,000 applications. We feel like the community solar option is going to be a nice alternative, because it can be scaled up as an individual customer wants. You can buy one panel, you can buy 500 panels. We've gotten, and it's interesting, I think both of the vendors were hesitant that we were rolling both programs out at the same time, that one would be stealing market share from the other. But it's really worked out quite well, where if you don't qualify for solar host, look at these other programs we have. And we also refer the people who don't qualify for solar host to CPS's other offerings on demand response and EE and weatherization. So it's all working very nicely together. And we do start our first installs on solar host next week. Roofless solar should be around April timeframe. So with that, I'll turn it back.